there.
Yeah.
How about the one about the hayloft? And the
Okay. I have to preface it by telling you don't. I have to tell you what a unloading hay with a fork is like in one of the old barns. You would back the wagon with loose hay rather than baled hay. You'd back the loose hay into the barn, and then from the ceiling, there's a rope attached to a hay hook, which comes down. There's two hay hooks that come down like that and go down into the loose hay, and push down into the loose hay, and then the person up on top sets the tines, which at the lower end of the tines go down into the hay, and there are little clips that come out like that, and they hold the loose hay, and then you lift it up with some kind of a mechanism that runs the rope up, and it goes up and hits a dog in the ceiling, and then it releases and goes down into the interior part of the upper barn.
There's a tractor that's up
With the tractor is pulling the rope, so it goes down that way through the barn. And when it gets to the point you want it, then there's somebody standing on the side who pulls the trip and drops the hay. So we had the wagon backed in. We had my father up on the load of loose hay. We had the tines come down and go into the bales and set. And just as they set, my father had a whistle, so he would blow a whistle. And he would blow a whistle.
Some of us know how to say
and as he was getting off the wagon, he would blow the whistle, and the person outside on the tractor would drive ahead and pull the rope, and the rope would lift the hay, go down into the barn, and drop the load. So he got on. He was up on the load, and he set the tines. And Stevie Willett, who's another friend of ours, he was out on the tractor waiting to go. And my brother Carl was outside looking in a window, and he also had a whistle. As my father set the tines, Carl blew the whistle. Stevie took off, and up to the ceiling he went. It clicked off, and he rode the load all the way down into the barn, at which we hit the stop down at the end, and the stop dropped him into the hayloft. And to this day, he does not know that somebody else had a whistle outside. He went to his deathbed not knowing that there was another whistle outside. That's a true story. All right.
Oh God! I could just
Fire engine.
Joey John?
Go ahead.
The fire hose.
Okay.
At camp.
Yep. Every summer we had a great fire engine. It was this is true. We had a. So you've seen pictures. If you look at on Facebook at Camp Winnicky, you'll see the fire engine. It's a 1924 Deluge Master Firefighter, and it would shoot a stream of water 250 feet. It had tremendous pressure. So every summer we had a fire hose fight up at the dam where we had an unlimited supply of water. So we get a group on one side of the fire engine. We'd get a group on one side of the fire engine with a hose. We get a group on the other side of the fire engine with a hose, and they would shoot the hoses at each other. So Stevie and Joe Maioriello were on one side. Were on the one side that summer, and Carl and I were on the other side. So we decided that we would turn down their pressure just a little bit. Not realizing that when you turn down the pressure on one side, you turn up the pressure on the other side. So we ran the fire hose. We primed the pump. We got it ready to go. We hit the governor on the tractor engine, and it built up power as it built up the speed of the pump. And I remember this like it was yesterday. Their pump came out in a little tiny trickle. And ours came out about 300 psi. It blew their whole line into the lake.
It's so dangerous.
I'm amazed that nobody got hurt. Nobody got hurt. Boy, that was.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Carl and I got our hands on a package of exploding toothpicks that you would put in a
As you do.
That was an idea.
that you would put in a cigarette.
Exploding.
And what they were was they were little toothpick tips that were dipped in gunpowder.
Obviously.
So there would be an explosion when the cigarette burned to the toothpick tip. So we took 2 or 3 of these and we put them in my father's cigarette pack.
Well, when you light the cigarette, it's supposed to. Right?
Yeah,
Explode.
so
It
you light the
teaches you not to
cigarette
smoke.
and it
Compliments of
bangs
Gina.
off.
Oh my goodness.
So
Pass them around.
what we didn't realize
Don't
was
eat them all myself.
that my father would take he smoked Camel cigarettes, so you can smoke either end of a Camel's.
Unfolds ours.
And he would take the cigarette out of the pack. He always did this. We didn't pick up on it. He'd take the cigarette out of the pack, and he would tamp it down on a table, compress pack it down, compress the tobacco, and then he would put it in his mouth from the top end. And we had put the toothpicks in the top end because we thought he would pull it out and light it like you normally would. So he was doing it backwards. So
But he did not.
he had it in his mouth, and we had only fixed 3 cigarettes in the pack, and it didn't go off. So we figured, well, okay, that's it. That's it's not going to happen. But he also had a habit of smoking them all the way down. And at the very end, the last puff, he would have it kind of like this in his mouth. And he go. At which point, this damn thing went off. And I'm telling you, we didn't expect it, and certainly he didn't expect it. When the smoke cleared, he had a black ring around his lip. The cigarette itself was kind of hanging by shreds from his lip.
What did you do?
Did you get?
Huh?
What did you do? Did you
Oh,
find that?
he was mad as hell. He was going to kill somebody.
Did you get caught? Did he know it was you?
Oh, are you kidding?
Of course he knew. Who else could it? And you're like,
Could it have been? Who else could it have been?
Carl. Very busy.
I had I was the senior counselor in one of the big boys' cabins, one of the older boys' cabins. So when the lights went out, I was there most of the time. And almost every night, Carl and Joe John would take the farm truck, put it in neutral, push it down the driveway. You can see that if you go over and see the farm truck. You can see how they could do that. Push it down the driveway, out the gate, going down Lower Hollow Road, and then jump start it when they got outside the gate and drive it up to Granville, which was about 18 miles, to a place on the New York State border called Georgie's, and they would sit there and have drinks at Georgie's, because Georgie was a safe place to drink for kids, for teenagers. And then late at night, they would drive the farm truck back home, and sneak it in basically the same way and park it, and nobody was the wiser. Nobody knew. And they did this several nights a week.
Never did.
I don't think I ever went to George's. I went to Manchester once or twice, but in Vermont it was a lot harder to get alcohol as a teenager. A lot harder.
Was Georgie's in New
I don't
Hampshire?
think he answered that.
I'm sorry?
But
Was Georgie? Oh, Georgie.
Georgie was New York State. Yeah, New York State.
I don't think that was an answer.
That's a lawyer's
He's a
answer.
lawyer.
Yeah.
Plays a
Lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I.
Wasn't it Joe John who drove the car? He couldn't get it going, so he drove it in reverse back to the farm.
He did. That's true. They got that from Georgie's. They could not get it. They couldn't get the car out of reverse, so they came all the way home. I
18
totally
miles.
forgot about that. They came
18
all the
miles?
way down Route 30, 18 miles in reverse. That is a true story. I'd forgotten about that totally.
And didn't your father?
And he was backing our farm wagon. We had a two-wheel farm wagon. It was a dump farm wagon. You could pull a pin and dump the back end of the farm wagon. And we had a load of rocks on the farm wagon, weighted on the rear end. And so we backed the farm wagon up to the edge of the pond in Dorset, and Carl was on the tractor and he backed it up to the point where we wanted it, and I pulled the pin, except I couldn't get the pin out. I couldn't pull the pin. So my father got on the trailer, and I still couldn't pull the pin. So my Uncle Herman got on the trailer. So I had my father and my Uncle Herman on the trailer, trying to get this pin pulled as they were standing on it, and they were jumping up and down, trying to get it to, to get the front end of it to come down on the jump. And they got it coordinated, and the pin, they jumped about 3 times, and the pin came 1, 2, 3, out. And the wagon went, whoop. They went, 2 of them went off the wagon like a catapult. They went all the way out into the middle of the pond where the rocks fell down like this. Of course, my father was furious by that. And Uncle Carl said, "It wasn't my idea." True story.
And what
Wasn't my idea. Huh?
the one you went into the shed?
I'll tell you one more.
I hadn't heard that. I
Okay.
hadn't heard that first one.
Let's hear it.
Uncle Carl pulled the two-wheel hay wagon into a place where there's a very short turnaround with the two-wheel wagon. He had the wagon loaded up about 7 layers high with hay, and my father was standing out in front, and he said, "I want you to go as far up to the horse barn as you can go, and then take a sharp left and go down that narrow alleyway." And Carl said, "There's not enough room." And my father said, "Go ahead." So Carl pulled ahead a little bit, and now my father's out behind the wagon, and he's yelling at the top of his lungs, "Go ahead." And Carl said, "There's not enough room." And my father said, "Go ahead." He put it in gear, and he went down that narrow runway, and he took the corner of the barn off. The shales, the slates were coming off the roof, and my father was yelling, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" And Carl went right down the alleyway.
The firecrackers at Camp Winnicky.
How about the one about Stevie's underpants?
Okay, look, I have to sit for this. This is back in the very early days of summer camp in the 50s, 1950s, so it's more than 60 years ago. And the summer camp laundry was run by Carl and Tommy Pickard, and they ran the summer laundry. So every week they did the laundry for all the campers and all the counselors and brought it all back in, folded it up, and so forth. So Stevie was complaining. Now, Stevie was very heavy set. Stevie was 5x5. And Stevie was complaining. Stevie was complaining that his underwear didn't fit. Carl and Tommy Pickard were telling him, they said, that's ridiculous. Your problem is you're losing weight and you don't know it. And you need to get some smaller underpants. So one day, Stevie came out around the corner, and Carl and Tommy Pickard were hanging the laundry outside, and they would take one of Stevie's underpants and put a clothespin in it over here like this. And Carl would put the clothespin in like that, and and Tommy would pull it as far as he could pull it. It was out like this. And he put a clothespin in it out here. So they went from a size 38 to about a size 60 to dry in that position. That's what was happening to Stevie's underpants.
Oh, good.
For the cigarette story.
The firecracker story.
Carl and I.
What's that got to do with it? Oh, this is recorded.
Carl and I had a few really large firecrackers, which at that time were called ash cans.
Oh.
Sir.
And so we decided that we would take those across the stream and up the little hill to the girls' cottage because they were having a slumber party that night. So about 9 o'clock at night, we got up there about maybe 50 feet from their camp, and we took one of the ash cans and threw it up under the porch. They were all out on the porch making noise. And there was a tremendous explosion. I mean, it was right. And of course, you know that whole Dorset Hollow is a ring of mountains. It's a U-shaped mountain that comes around like this, so it got magnified like you can't believe. And yelling and screaming, and I headed back down the hill. Carl stayed. He stayed there. I headed back down the hill across the stream into the farm shop. Turned a light on.
Trouble. He was the golden boy.
Turned a light on, and I was making myself busy there.
I'm whittling.
Working on a project.
Hoping that was the end of it. And the door crashed open, and there was my father in his PJs, saying, "What the hell happened?" I said, "I don't know." I said, somebody lit off a firecracker, I think is what happened. And you can still hear the kids up there, and So anyway, there's another explosion up there. And they're all yelling and screaming. And by this time, my father and I were standing outside trying to figure out what was going on.
All right.
What was happening? All of a sudden, everything quieted down. The yelling and screaming stopped and quieted down. And this chorus of little girls up on the front porch said, "We see you, Carl."
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about the one about the hayloft? And the
Okay. I have to preface it by telling you don't. I have to tell you what a unloading hay with.